The one man who helped build and oversee Newmont Mining's most profitable mine is on the cusp of delivering a new cash-flowing mining company to North America. With a 70 cent a share price target from Euro Pacific Capital, this 25 cent a share company is 35% owned by one of the most successful businessmen in America. Learn more about this investment idea at futuremoneytrends.com/wealth. Thank you for joining us at futuremoneytrends.com. I'm here with Peter Schiff. A lot of people consider you like you're one of the original people who educated people and really woke people up to this whole thing. It has just dragged out, though. You know, we read your book in 2007. Here we are. Are you surprised that it's dragged out this long?
I mean, I would have imagined when I first started talking about this that we would have had a bigger economic crisis than the one we've had. So, you know, we have been able to delay the pain. I don't know at this point that I'm still surprised because I've kind of gotten used to the fact that we're able to stretch this out. At first, maybe I overestimated the intelligence of the global community to understand our problems. I figured initially when I wrote my first book, Crash Proof, that when our housing bubble burst and the economy imploded and banks failed and Fannie and Freddie went under, that our creditors would wake up and realize, how we've conned them, and they wouldn't be as interested in financing our consumption anymore. That the global demand for our treasuries would dry up and we would have a much bigger crisis by now. I thought that we would have had our crisis before Europe had theirs, and I was wrong on that because Europe is having a crisis first, and what that's actually doing is postponing ours because we're the beneficiaries of all that flight capital. A lot of money is going into the dollar because people think as bad as we are, it's worse other places. And the truth is it's not. It's actually worse here. The only reason it doesn't appear to be worse here is because we got these really low interest rates. You know, if Spain, if Greece still had really low interest rates, there'd be no problem there either. You know, Greece had record low interest rates a few years ago, even though they were just as broke then as they are now. But people woke up to the reality and then rates went up. Well, people are still oblivious to how bad the situation is in the United States. And when they wake up, interest rates are going to soar, and we can't afford it. We can't afford to pay the interest, let alone retire the principal. Because as interest rates go up, people are going to want their money back because they're going to realize that we can't afford to service the debt at the higher rates. And then we're going to have a real crash. We're going to have a sovereign debt crisis. We're going to have a currency crisis. I would imagine that it's going to happen in the next few years. It doesn't mean that we can't somehow make it through another year of Obama without a crisis. I would be surprised, though. I mean, given how bad the problem is and how much worse I know it's going to get over the next few years, that we can actually make it through another presidential cycle without the real crash. And believe me, we don't want it to happen. The further into the future the crash happens, the worse it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because we're crashing from a higher point. The longer it goes on, the more screwed up the economy gets. We're digging this hole deeper. We need to restructure the economy. We need more savings. We need more investment, less consumption, less government spending. We need fewer regulations, lower taxes. We're not getting any of that right now. We're getting the opposite of that.
Do you think it's a blessing in disguise that Obama won? Because if Romney would have won, here you've got a guy who sounds like, free market. He supports the Constitution. It would have collapsed on him. We might have had a situation where, FDR and socialists won for another 30, 40 years.
Well, that's what I thought. That was one of the reasons I thought it was okay to have Obama last time, because I had expected it to hit the fan, during his first term. And I thought then we will elect somebody different. But you never know. I mean, Romney didn't sound that much like a free market guy to me. I mean, I was talking on my radio show after the debates that it was like watching a Democratic primary debate. I mean, it didn't seem like they were, as a Republican, even running. After the fact, Romney is talking about how Obama won the election because he, gave away a lot of free stuff. But the problem is Romney was promising free stuff too. He just got out-promised.
Yeah.
And, you can't battle a Democrat over who's going to give out more freebies because as a Republican, you look like a hypocrite and people don't believe you. The problem was he didn't really embrace the free market enough. He should have laid it on the table as to what those paying the bills, what the stakes are. Really describe how bad the situation is and articulate a vision of America where there is no income tax. Give the people who are paying the bills a reason to vote Republican. And that's, hey, you're not going to have to pay all these taxes. The good news is if we can slash the size of government, if we can make government a lot smaller and, and stop spending all this money, the carrot there is that we can maybe get rid of the income tax. Maybe if he would have gone after the working people's vote, people that are paying the bills, they could have outvoted the Obama core constituency that just wants something for nothing from the government. I mean, I think that the economy will be worse at the end of Obama's second term than it was at the beginning of his first. And even though he took office in the middle of a financial crisis. So it's going to be pretty bad when he's finished,
What kind of government is ideal? Because the problem is idiots vote. And there's more idiots than educated people who know what's going on. I mean, the undecided voter, like say 3%. I mean, who's undecided the day before the election? I mean, come on. Those people
right.
decided the election.
I called them idiots on my radio show. I basically, I looked at all the money that we spent on the election, which was, $8 billion or some record amount of money, even though the Congress barely changed. The White House didn't change. But almost all the spending is on television ads. Now, who makes up their mind? Who decides who to vote for based on a TV ad? Well, you're pretty much an idiot.
Yeah.
Because even people that vote Democrat, at least I have a little respect for the people who decide that on their own. They research the issues, they research the candidates, they have an ideology, they believe in something, even if what they believe in is nonsense. At least they came to a decision. I mean, to say that we're going to leave it up to the people who decide based on a TV commercial, I mean, and that's basically why Obama won, right? He got more idiots to vote for him than Romney did.
Yeah.
And how do you get idiots to vote for you? You promise them stuff because they're too dumb to realize that free stuff is very expensive, especially when it comes from government. But we are at that point now where democracies implode. And that's why the founding fathers tried so hard to protect us from what they saw as the evils of democracy. And the Constitution is full of safeguards to prevent the majority from tyrannizing the minority. But unfortunately, those safeguards have been dismantled over time, and the nation has become exactly what the founding fathers tried so hard to keep it from becoming.
Yeah. I know we're way over time, and I know you have a speech coming up. I just wanted to ask you real quickly about, we're surrounded by mining equities. The mining stocks, a lot of people, obviously it's an easy sell to go buy gold and silver, but then you're like, okay, I've got my gold and silver, I feel like I'm ready for the collapse, and now I want to make some big profits. So they got into these mining stocks, and they've been a horrible investment for a lot of people for the past few years. I was wondering, what do you think of the industry itself, and where are we right now with it?
Most stocks, I mean, there have been some stocks that have done really well, and in fact, most of the stocks, or probably the only stocks really that have done well, have been a lot of these royalty trust stocks. And the reason is because they get the upside of gold without the downside of the cost of mining it. Their income is simply tied to the price of gold. And so they're not getting dragged down by the escalating cost of mining gold. And that's really the untold story behind the gold market, is even though the price of gold has gone up, and you can look at the price of gold and say, how can these gold stocks be lower than they were when gold was a third of its current price? Right? Gold has tripled. How can this stock that's a gold mining company, how can it have gone down? It should have gone up. It should have more than tripled because of leverage. Well, the fact is, even though the price of gold went up, the cost of mining it went up as much, if not more. The leverage in a gold stock, and the reason that people buy mining stocks for leverage, is because the idea is that the price of gold will go up more than the production cost. Therefore, the company will have a leveraged impact on its earnings. And as prices go up, all of a sudden, lower grades become more profitable to mine. And sometimes you have reserves that you can't even mine at a certain price. But as the price goes up, then they become viable. And so now your reserves grow. And so in a bull market for gold, it can be great for gold stocks. The problem is we haven't even had the bull market yet because gold prices aren't even up. They simply reflect the higher cost of mining gold. So that's why these companies haven't had the success that you would imagine. The question is that ever going to change? I think it will. I think at some point when people appreciate the gravity of the situation, not only in America, but in Europe, in Japan, all over the world, with all this money printing and 0% interest rates or quantitative easing going on, that currencies are going to get killed. And the loss of purchasing power is going to be enormous. And the world is going to rediscover gold as a store of value, as a monetary metal, not just any metal. and it's going to have that premium, and I think the price of gold is going to skyrocket. And in fact, it's ironic, one of the reasons that gold still hasn't really taken off is because so many people are convinced there's no inflation. Now, why do people believe there's no inflation, despite the fact that the governments around the world are inflating? And that's what inflation is. It's an expansion of the money supply. That's literally where the world came from. To inflate means to expand, and what's being expanded is money supply. That results in rising prices, but governments are convincing people that prices aren't rising, even though they're not. I mean, our government comes out with these bogus CPI numbers and says there's no inflation. Fox News did a poll, and they asked registered voters, what is your number one economic concern? And the overwhelming response, by almost a 2-to-1 margin, was inflation was your biggest concern. Wasn't unemployment, wasn't housing, wasn't health care, it wasn't taxes, it was inflation. Yet the government claims there's no inflation. And since gold mining companies, investors, they also think there's no inflation, then why is it so expensive to mine gold? Why are mining costs rising so dramatically if there's no inflation? The fact is there's a lot of inflation, and gold mining stocks are suffering because inflation is increasing the cost of mining, but because nobody thinks there's any inflation, they're not getting that inflationary boost in the value of gold.
Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate talking to you about the economy.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Sure.